I hope to be the easiest guinea pig that you could ask for.
I'm sure you'll be a show-winning guinea pig. Hello, I'm Matt Patterson, and in this season of the podcast, I'm talking to people about an edition of the supportive newsletter that resonated with them, and then we use that as a starting point for a conversation. In this episode, my guest is Help Scout's unstoppable Alison Groves, and we're talking about teaching online classes as a form of customer service. It's the supportive.
My name is Alison Groves, and I am the customer education lead at Help Scout. I think it means something different if you ask any different person. But to me, it means I'm responsible for helping our customers learn as much about and be as successful with Help Scout as they possibly can be.
Alison picked a newsletter that was called "And Still Others to Be Teachers," and I'll link it in the show notes, but here it is. As a 19-year-old in university, there were few people on earth I understood less than the mature-age students in my classes. They were always engaged and interacting with the professors and asking clarifying questions to elicit answers that they seemed to actually care about. What was wrong with them? At that time, I was mostly concerned with whether today was the day I would finally break my personal hot chip stacking record. The cafe charged for chips by the plate and not by weight, which encouraged some truly precarious stacking techniques. Structural engineering lectures probably would have been of more immediate use than my IT degree was. The difference was that those students had some life experiences. They'd done real work, and these classes to them represented a real chance to change their lives. They knew why they were there. They understood the value of their time and the money they were spending and the outcome they could get in ways that I just could not comprehend. Now, as a chronologically mature man, I have more appreciation for the value of a live class and a good teacher. Having someone not just deliver facts, but also share context, adapt to the individual students, share their passion, and connect personally. It can improve outcomes, it can save time, it can make learning more enjoyable. It's not yet clear how much of our frontline support work will eventually be handled by AI tools and self-service systems, but I think leaning into the human-to-human customer education elements of our work is a smart choice. There's a lot of potential upside. Live classes can serve multiple customers at once. They have strengths that even the best documentation can't easily match. They can be adapted to changing circumstances, like a new product release. They can be flexible enough to adapt to the audience on any given day. They can help instill a conceptual model, giving customers a grounding in how your whole service fits together. And they can correct misunderstandings in the moment and encourage product usage in a non-salesy, educational way. Not every support person is well suited to live customer education because doing it well requires a sort of performance skill and quick thinking. Maybe that doesn't appeal to everyone. But there are plenty of former teachers in the support ranks and lots of other people who have both the skills and the interest to do it well. Even on Help Scout's own support team, we've got several people running regular classes, some who used to be teachers. People coming to SaaS product classes are the internet's mature-age students. They've got a job to do, they just need the information quickly and in a format that they can put to use. If your organization is not already investing in customer education, now might be the time to get started. You've probably already got people on your team who would be great educators and would love to be involved. Now, Alison is a veteran teacher of online classes.
I think my last count, I have done over 700 Help Scout classes in my tenure here.
Did you, as a student, at any point in your life, did you have a favorite class or a favorite teacher?
I was a terrible student. But I had a teacher in 6th grade that instead of teaching, we would watch, there's this concept in the 90s, maybe 80s here in the States, where there was a TV channel dedicated to news for like age-appropriate news. So we would watch these news stories, and then she would just open debate up for the entire class to like talk about. And 6th grade is like 11, 12 years old. And I deeply remember loving like that sort of participatory, conversational learning from each other, which I definitely think translates into what I do today.
Did you have, by contrast, a lot of other teachers standing at the front talking at you in a kind of scripted way?
Yeah, yeah, that sort of rote form of like, eh, question A is answered by answer B, and this is how, you do things was just not it's not interesting at all. It's not a fun way to learn.
Now, most of us will appreciate the value of a good teacher, but not everyone is comfortable with being the teacher.
The overarching hesitation that I see from my teammates throughout the years when it's come to like me seeing if anyone else wants to participate in something like this is that fear of being wrong, which is I understand. We've all been there, right? Especially earlier in our career, we're terrified of giving people the wrong answer. I don't know if that's like in a mental state of never wanting to appear foolish or wrong or whatever the case may be, but you're always going to be the expert, even if you've only been at the company for 6 months and you decide I want to start teaching, you're going to know more than that person coming to your class. And if you kind of go into it with that fearless mindset of like, I am going to make mistakes, that is okay. And I still am the expert in the room. I think that's what can kind of help people get over that mental hump of like being afraid to do something like that. I think the closest thing that it's akin to is doing live chat. But even when you're doing live chat, you still have those moments where you could go even a minute or two of silence, right? Because you could type into a live chat, like, let me go track that down for you, whatever the case may be. But here, when you're live in this type of environment, you don't have that luxury. So you really have to be able to think on your toes very, very quickly. And you also have to be willing to admit a lot that you don't know the answer to a question. Which email, we don't really have to do as much in email support because there's an almost infinite amount of time that we could spend either reading through documentation or trying to find a teammate who knows the answer to that question. But those are just not luxuries that you have in that sort of live environment. So we have a main repository page, whatever you want to call it, with not only a sign up form, but days and times where our live classes are available that you can sign up for. And there's also recordings of all of those classes there as well.
And why do you think people sign up? Do you get a sense of what makes them pull the trigger on that?
Yeah, it's a couple of things. For better, for worse, there are people in the world who don't want to talk to sales. And so, and they just want to kind of get a handle on what Help Scout is and how it works. So we see a lot of those types of folks coming to the class. We see folks who have signed up for a trial account, but maybe want to get, again, someone to kind of like walk them through the platform and how things work. And like I said, it's not a salesy environment at all. It's just strictly educational. Like, here's how this works. Do you have any questions? But we also get, and this surprised me when I started doing these many chronological years ago, and that is we have a lot of people come who are new users added to existing accounts. So that allows any new hire at a company that's using Help Scout or anything like that, their manager or team doesn't have to train them on how to use the platform that they're already like deep in and using. That allows us to help them educate those people as well. So it really kind of fits into those three buckets of people.
People who are, this is their job. They're trying to get something done. Nobody wants to be an expert in a help desk platform. No. They just want to help their customers because that's what they get paid to do. And making that something that they can engage with, where they can actually come out of it with a clearer perspective or having solved some specific problem that is actually making their life worse. What a win.
So mostly like, I'm a blank slate, please teach me.
And do you get into why people want to use the product? Are they coming in with like, this is the problem I have to solve?
Yes. I say that with a question face. But yes, at the end of the day, the main problem that anyone has to solve is that they cannot do good support as a team. And by a team, I mean more than one person outside of or in a Gmail or Outlook environment. Like that's just not possible. So that's the learning curve that we have to get over. Like people have been using those, and I mean, again, we want to talk about ubiquitous products, right? Like those, along with Zoom, are like two of the most ubiquitous tech products on the market, right? Outlook and Outlook is probably what, 25, 30 years old at this point. Gmail's a little younger, but it's still older. And those are the mostly the environments that people are coming from. So we have to like add that next layer of help on how to do something in a team environment that they're not necessarily used to.
And do you find doing that live is easier than trying to explain it over email?
Yes. And I do think that it also gives people or I hope anyway, that it gives people the sense that like we're here and we deeply care about your business and your experience. And we know not to have a pile of hubris on top of all this, but we know how game changing Help Scout can be for a team, even if that team is just two people. And I think people really feel that and in that live environment understand like we're just here to make sure that you get the most out of this. Can you imagine doing support even with just two people out of a Gmail inbox? Like what a nightmare experience. So just allowing people to sort of feel that like this is our thing. We've built this to solve this problem that we know you're having. We're here to help you learn it. We're here to answer your questions. I think that goes way longer of a way than people would even imagine.
And I imagine also that people coming to a live class can see, like, they can see you, they can hear your voice, they can grasp, oh, this is a company with real people who have some point of view and perspective.
I don't show video of me during the class because I don't want to pull focus from what people need to be learning. But I do feel very strongly about making mistakes in in it. And I mean, um, still after all these years I read a script, but that's just to keep myself on point. Otherwise I will run off into it and I'm like, oh, and let me teach you about this and let me teach you about this, and that's not the space for that. But even while reading that script, I allow myself to go off script. I allow myself to make mistakes. I allow my brain to wander, and then I'll come back. And I think that it sounds um really inconsequential, but I do think allowing for those things to happen uh shows that there is another human being on the other side of this call who truly only cares about like making sure that you learn as much as you can. And I firmly believe in having that type of environment be less polished than say maybe some other people would believe in.
Yes, there is a big difference, I think, between a live class and then a recorded video demo.
And even for the recording of the class, it is a little more polished, I'll give it that. And it cuts out like maybe 30 seconds to a minute of dead space in all of those ways. But I only record one take of it. I leave any tiny mistakes in there. Like if I pause and say, I don't cut that out. I leave that all in the recording as well. And I think that humanity comes through, and I hope anyway that people genuinely appreciate that.
I think it probably makes it feel more like this is a person helping me as opposed to this is a person teaching at me.
we've all been to those webinars or classes or whatever, where you can tell 30 seconds into it that that person doesn't want to be there, is deeply reading a script. Um, and you know, it's just like this methodical monotone and your brain, like, you as a learner are not going to be engaged in that in any way. And so um I think that it's even part of like Help Scout as a brand to like be as human as we can and just like help people to the best of our ability. And to me, that is, truly sounding like I want to be there. When I do classes and when no one can see me, I am talking with my hands and doing all those types of things because I think that comes through and I think people can feel that. And if they feel engaged and they feel like there's a equal human on the other side of that session, then they're going to um, stick around and learn. And our engagement rate for these things, like I'd say more than 90% of participants stay for the entire session.
Do you find that sometimes it goes off rails?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You just have to go with it and accept it. I think that I've been doing this for a very long time. I think I got into tech in 2000. I spent a decade in the music business and I got into tech around 2008. And I even started doing, live sessions back then at the first SaaS tech job I ever had. They actually built a recording studio for me that had an on-air light in the office. So when I was doing a session, it was on. But I think back to those times and like, they always went off the rails, and it was because I let them go off the rails, or I didn't have confidence in myself to have confidence in what I was teaching and understanding why people were there. Because I was not of a mature chronological age and I thought I knew it all. And that is when stuff goes off the rails very, very quickly. And I think it's just getting older and doing, I've done, like I said, 700 plus at Help Scout. I've probably done 1,000 plus in my career, right? And I think with that comes a little bit of a humility, is like I still don't know anything, and all I can do is like turn up and do the best job that I can, and most importantly, like care about the other people that are on the other side of this call. And that has taken me a long way. And still to this day, when things go off the rails, I'm able to roll with it a whole lot easier than I could back in the early days when I was just so panicked about getting everything perfect. It's like, man, nobody cares about that. They're just here to learn, you know?
All right. So if you were talking to someone who's like a lot of people are now, thinking in support, that maybe some of the email support that I do is not going to be done by people at all anymore, or at least some percentage of it. There is an opportunity for live classes and real-time interactions. You've done 1,000 of them,
Yeah.
but probably, they were quite different at the start than they are now.
Yeah.
Maybe you can help some people take a little shortcut, some advice on how to get started.
I think what's going to be really interesting in the next couple of years, especially, there's never ending conversation about AI taking away tier one jobs and support, which may or may not be true. I mean, that is yet to like truly be seen. But if there's one thing that I firmly believe is going to forever stay with us, is that, and may even become more so the deeper we get into the use of AI just in the general world, is that people will never not crave human interaction, right? Like there will be, I don't think we will ever live in a world where people do not desperately crave to have some sort of human interaction, connection, something like that. And that will become, I believe, more and more prevalent as we get deeper into AI doing what it's really good at, which is, data ingestion and those types of things that it's very, very good at. And so anything that you can do to sharpen your skills as a human to human communicator, in a live, so like beyond the keyboard type of way, I think is going to be huge. Because I still think that even if 95% of Help Scout support was AI automated, I still think we would get the same amount of, or maybe even more attendance and participation in our classes as someone is like, I need a person to teach me this, you know?
What's the very first step they could take? If you've got no classes at all, what are you going to do?
Find someone like me, or you can even come to me directly if you would like to. I'm happy to help anyone who wants to like jump into this world and record yourself because we this is how when folks come to us me internally and say, I want to help you do live classes. The first thing I tell them is, here's the script of our class, go start a Zoom and record yourself doing the class, and I'll give you feedback on that. And I think the only reason that I've gotten to where I am today with it is because I've just, in a bad sports pun, I have got the reps in, right? Like I have just done it so many times. And I think if you feel like you want to start doing something like that, the best way to do it is to just start doing it. And you don't have to have an audience. You can just do it to yourself, record yourself doing it, and ask someone to give you feedback on it. And the more you do that, the better you're going to get. And I think you'll pick it up really, really quickly.
And the nature of live classes is sometimes you're not going to have much of an audience, and sometimes there'll be a ton of people.
Yep.
Do you find that there's any difference in how they run?
Yesterday I did a class with 120 people in it, and the day before I did a class with 3 people in it. And I I treated them pretty much the same. Because if you think about those 3 people, they they still want to learn. There's no different than being one of 120 or one of 3, right? Like you're still in that space, you still want to learn. And I personally don't treat those situations any differently, because those 3 people deserve that same amount of time and respect as those 122 people gathered together do. So
Are you able to adjust in terms of, maybe answering specific questions if there's a smaller group?
I've experimented with that in the past, where there have been times where only one person has showed up, and I will just throw the script out and say, just start typing questions into the chat, and I will just live answer them for you. I haven't done that in a while. Maybe I should do that again soon. But yeah, I mean, you can, even having just a few people there does allow you to kind of pivot in that way, which also, I keep hitting my microphone, which also makes you a better teacher, I think, because doing those classes for 2 3 people that you do off the cuff give you a way to learn and to make mistakes, because those 2 or 3 people don't care, they're just kind of there rolling with it. And they actually think it's cool that you're like that deeply interacting with them, right? So yeah, you can really kind of pivot around and experiment when you have just a few people showing up to something.
And when it's a small class, yeah, sometimes you feel like, well, I'm putting all the effort in for only a few people. But the benefit of it is there's only a few people. You can try something. If it doesn't go that well, you haven't like ruined 1,000 people's days.
No.
You've made a mistake, and you can follow up with people individually if you need to at that scale.
Oh, I've done that many times. I even on one-on-one calls, right? When I'm doing like a consult call or an onboarding call, which in theory is the same concept, right? I'm teaching someone, but instead of one to many, I'm teaching one to one. I remember, and this was not that, maybe just a couple of months ago, I start explaining a concept to someone, halfway through realize I am totally wrong, but I keep going, not to save face, I just couldn't get out of it. And then when I was over, I followed up with them via email. I was like, I just want to let you know I was very wrong about this, and here's the actual answer. So people are so forgiving of that. Um, that's the number one advice I would give to anyone who wants to start doing this type of thing or is curious at all, is like never be afraid of making mistakes, because even the first time you teach someone something, you're still more of an expert on that thing than they are. And the key is to just be like, Never, but then never be afraid to make mistakes, but then also never be afraid to admit that you've made a mistake. And people are, no one's ever mad. If you ever go back to someone and say, I know you were in our class today, uh, I gave some bad advice, or I told you the wrong thing. Here's how this actually works. They're just so happy that you followed up with them, and no one cares at the end of the day. So, using every opportunity to like learn from the one before it is a great way. Again, whether it's two people or 500 people.
If someone was to try this, they run a few classes, how will they know if it's working?
I mean, that's different for everyone. I'm a bad person to ask this question to, much to the chagrin of my teammates. I don't have hard goals around at least the basic classes that we teach, because we know that people need to learn Help Scout no matter what, right? So, I've got a few sort of loose metrics that I tie, or success metrics that I tie to it. Our conversion rate on classes is extraordinarily high. But then, you could argue correlation, causation, whichever one. I failed all my math classes. So speaking of bad student, I never remember which one is right. But someone might say, well, yeah, that person was going to convert anyway because they showed enough interest to like come learn about this thing. Great, fine, whatever. But we look at other things like, did a new user, so a lot of times a new user gets added to an account, they come to a class, they end up, maybe they're the new manager for that team, or the new, head of support at that company. And then they come to a class and they end up expanding their account because they learned more about Help Scout and could use more. We also look at, we do surveys during our classes to make sure that, like, at the end of the class, people actually learned what they came to learn for. But that's just specific to us. Maybe that'll give folks some different ideas of ways that you can measure things. But at the end of the day, and my boss agrees with me on this, is that we know that it's the right thing to do, so we just do it.
100%. I think the lesson for people listening to this is probably just go out and try it. It may or may not work for you in your particular situation. Maybe you're not the right person to do it, but someone else on the team is. But you can just try it and see how people respond to it, see who turns up, and then you can adjust from there. You don't have to have it perfect when you start, or in fact, ever.
Right. My biggest handicap right now is that I don't have enough of me to go around to do all the different types of classes and teaching that we want to offer people, right? We kind of have to really pick and choose what we do just for our own time's sake, because there's other things going on in our day to day. But one thing I did do is 2 years ago, or has it been it's been maybe 18 months ago, we did a major update to the platform, maybe the biggest one that it's ever had. And I did a live class every single day to help coach people through that transition, because that is what was needed at that time. So the pendulum will swing back and forth of like what people need at any given moment. And you just, I think doing this work, if you're just like really flexible to that and say, today, here's what our customers need to learn about, and know that 6 months from now that might be a completely different thing. And you just kind of have to like go with the flow.
Go with the flow, do it live, figure it out on the fly. That's live classes.
You nailed it.
My thanks to Alison for a great conversation, as always. She's quite serious about her willingness to help people get started with classes, so if you are interested in doing it, I would say take her up on that. Just email thesupportive@helpscout.com. I'll connect you. Even if you're not going to run actual classes, there is tons of good advice in this episode for getting your reps in, for not getting hung up on mistakes, and focusing on effective ways of teaching. The Supportive Podcast is also on YouTube this season. Same interview, but you can see my face, and I'll chuck in some bonus Australian footage so you've got something nicer to look at than that. If you can take a moment to rate and review the podcast on Apple or on Spotify, that would mean a lot to me. I'm Matt Patterson. This has been The Supportive, and I will see you right here again in a couple of weeks with a brand new episode.